Hello, and welcome to In Response, the Magic the Gathering debate show where Josh Lee Kwai, myself, and today, special guest, debate current topics in Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, you might notice that my Command Zone co-host Jimmy Wong is here.
Hi, it's me.
So we're doing a slightly different format today. Each of us will be debater and moderator sometimes. So we're going to do 3 different topics, and each of us will be a moderator on one of those topics.
So we're all going to debate each other one time. It's a perfect match.
So at the end of each segment, you can click on the eye that is going to appear at the top right of your screen, and you can vote for which rhetor you think made the better argument. What we ask, as always, is that you not vote which side of the argument you personally agree with, but rather on which person making the argument did a better job presenting their point and putting forward the overall debate.
All right. Well, the Magic Pro League, as many of you out there know, has had its ups and downs. It came in with a big bang. It completely dissolved the Pro Tour when it came in favor of a new system with new players, special invites, and commitments over the course of a year, and contracts and all that stuff. But it's been embroiled in a lot of controversy because, as we all know, most recently, Jerry Thompson announced he would be resigning for the MPL. And on that same day, they added 2 brand new players to the league. So a lot of things have been happening. So, Prof, you're the one that wants it to change. I think you should kick off this debate and tell us what you think needs to be done with the MPL in its current state.
First, I want to be very clear that while I am being critical of the current state of the MPL, I am in no way being critical of its members, several of whom are my friends. I do not have any grievance with the members of the MPL, but I do feel that the implementation of the MPL and what we've seen Wizards of the Coast do with it over this recent time of its inception has essentially been a failure. Most Magic the Gathering players can't even name who is in the MPL except for 3-6 people at most. We are seeing organized play, which has been an institution of Magic the Gathering for literal decades, has been dismantled to make a new system where we don't even know the criteria for making the MPL next year. Rules and strategy does not seem to apply here, and as such, I would say that we need to go back to the Pro Tour model. Yes, I believe that the players, the pros, need to be paid more and treated better than they were under that model. And yes, I am excited and I am in favor of the lucrative contracts that have been offered in the MPL. But what I speak of is the system itself, for qualifying for it, for showing this to fans and viewers of Magic the Gathering, for using it as a promotion of the game. We do not even have people tuning in as we once did for events such as the Pro Tour. And so I feel that while it was a good idea to try and capitalize on the success of Magic Arena, we need to cut our losses and go back to the way things were under the Pro Tour, perhaps tweaking improvements in terms of prizes, perhaps tweaking improvements in terms of contracts for the top performing members of the Pro Tour, but it's time to go back to the system that has supported Magic the Gathering for literal decades.
Wow, 2 minutes on the dot. Prof, great answer there. Josh, rebuttal.
I don't understand how going back to the old system is going to be viable. You said yourself Magic Arena is a huge success. The new system, any system that they're currently going to use, has to take advantage of Magic Arena. It's literally bringing millions of players into the game. It has to be at the forefront and the main showcasing thing that is used in any promotion, I think, of Magic the Gathering from here moving forward. Not that paper is going to totally go away, but I mean, I agree that the MPL was implemented incorrectly and there are problems with it, but I think the idea that we are going to move towards streaming, we're going to have a sort of more often showing the players is a good one. Now, it was implemented incorrectly. They thought they could take the current roster of pros and turn them into streamers when streamers do not have the same skill set. Succeeding at streaming is not the same skill set as succeeding at professional Magic. It's an entertainment business rather than a competitive business. So I think that they need to decide, Wizards, I mean, what it is they're aiming for. And without being in the doors of that building and in that room, it's hard to know exactly what the goal is. They need to set that goal and go towards it. But I think the system as it is now is pointed towards Arena, towards streaming, and that's where it needs to be. Pointing towards paper Magic is the past. It's not the way to go. Going back towards what we have is not the way to go. We need to look forward in the future because digital is what is pushing Magic right now. And so if we're not going towards that, what are we doing?
Prof, response.
Pointing towards paper is not the way to go. I'm sorry, but paper is Magic the Gathering. Arena has indeed been a huge success, but it's also still in beta. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, especially when that basket is still in beta. I am absolutely in agreement that Arena has brought in hordes of new players, but that doesn't mean that you completely dismantle the Pro Tour for a platform that wasn't even designed for competitive broadcast play. We've already seen that Arena does not have a tournament mode for the most optimal broadcast of these matches and events. Instead of completely dismantling the Pro Tour for a system such as the MPL where we don't even know what professional players need to do to qualify for next year's, what we need to do is bring back the Pro Tour and then add onto it an Arena section once, I would presume, Arena has been programmed with something such as a tournament display and broadcast mode that doesn't have the problems that we saw inherent at, say, the Invitational.
Arena doesn't have a broadcast-ready tournament mode. You know what doesn't have a broadcast-ready tournament mode? Paper Magic. How the heck do you watch Paper Magic? I can be on Twitch, I can mouse over cards, and I can see cards. How can you claim that watching Paper Magic tournaments is in any way superior to watching people play Arena? That, to me, frankly, is nutso. I understand a lot of the things, and I do agree with some of the concerns. How do you get into the MPL? How does the system work? Is it going to be more about competitiveness, or is it going to be more about entertainment value? Is it going to be parked on a small number of players, or are we going to open up to large amounts like the Pro Tour used to do? Those are all questions that have to be answered, and I agree. There are problems, and they've been waffling back and forth between a few of them. But if they can land on a plan, a goal, aim at a target, I still think the basic MPL model of we're going to park most of our mental real estate on Arena is the correct way to go.
All right. I think you guys have been making some great points. One thing I want to address before we conclude this topic is from the player's perspective, obviously this has been a very confusing time for a lot of them. A lot of people that were pros before have been asked to stream that aren't necessarily streamers, and it seems there's been some mishandling of this as well. What do you think are the correct moves, regardless of whether or not the MPL sticks around or goes away, that Wizards needs to treat its players with, as well as the growing player base, in order to really effectively make use of this? Josh, you want to start?
Yeah, I think that understanding that there's a difference between what makes you good at competitive Magic and what makes you good at streaming Magic is sort of the first step. And I think they've started to acknowledge that and understand that, bringing in some streaming players into the MPL. And I know that's caused a lot of upheaval because of the mixed messages sent. And I think the real mistake isn't that they've done this recently, it's that they didn't do it from the start. They started with competitive players, which send a message that that's what this is about. And I think if they would have started with a different tact and had some streamers in there, and maybe mostly streamers in there, then nobody would be complaining now, because that's where it would have been set. That's the precedent from the beginning. So really, that's the problem, is they've tried to make a U-turn because they noticed, oh, just because you're good at competitive Magic doesn't mean I want to put you in front of a camera with a microphone to entertain people. Some of them can do it, but not all of them can. So I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Prof, what do you think about the player status currently?
Well, I actually think that one of the things I do like, and I will concede that I do like, is the way in which we have brought in streamers who have, as you know, from streaming, you don't necessarily have time to go down to a GP every weekend and compete in that GP. And that does not mean that you are a poor player. It certainly doesn't mean that you're a poor entertainer. And I like that there has been an inclusion of streamers and other creators, maybe even one day YouTubers. I don't know if we'll get that far, but no, I don't know. Let's not go crazy. But nonetheless, I've been team stream all the way. However, once again, even with this, criteria is lacking. We do not even understand why some streamer, what do I have to do as a streamer to qualify? The dream of professional Magic, the dream of the Pro Tour, and I would think the dream of the MPL should be that I too can get there. So what if I wanted to achieve a seat at the MPL through streaming, there needs to be an outline of things that I follow in order to get there. Maybe it's not tournament results. I am A-okay with it not being tournament results. But perhaps what we needed to do was not dismantle the Pro Tour, but instead create a new league that is focused on digital and streaming that could even have things like an invitational where they'll go up against Pro Tour winners. And I'd like to actually close, if I may, moderator, with a question to my colleague here. If you do agree that the point of the MPL is still pro as in promotional and that that's its purpose, I would question how many members, and you are a highly enfranchised and content creator, how many members of the MPL can you actually name?
Yeah, it's not very many. Less than 10 probably. I don't know if that's a good barometer to measure whether it's successful or not, but I will grant that I think they've mishandled it, right? The trailer for MTG Arena is everyone will know your name. So if that is a thing, and
I forgot about that.
Right.
I mean, listen, if that's a thing, which clearly you made it a thing, we didn't make it a thing, you said that stuff, then tell me how I can have it so everyone knows my name. And right now, they haven't told anyone. Everyone will know your name. How?
Right.
So that I think that is lacking, and I do agree. What's the criteria to get in, to stay in, to be successful at it?
Excellent point.
And again, I want to stress that I'm actually a huge fan of the members of the MPL, and I'm in support of the individuals. I'm certainly in support of things like inclusion of streamers and other non-traditional professional players like streamers and other content creators. All of that is great stuff, but I don't think that the Pro Tour had to die due to Magic Arena's immediate success. And what happens if that success doesn't last 25 years as Paper Magic had?
Who do you think won this debate? Make sure you click the I icon that's at the top right of your screen to make a vote right now.
All right, I'll be moderating our next segment. And you know, Prof, you couldn't come here into our studio without talking about our favorite subject, Commander.
Ding, ding, ding.
Oh, I thought it was Oathbreaker.
So with the recent addition of Paradox Engine and Iona to the ban list, it's kickstarted a larger discussion in the EDH sphere. Players as a whole are questioning what they want to experience from the format. There's the philosophy document that the Rules Committee recently put out. And so the topic of discussion here is, does Commander even need a Rules Committee and an updated or constantly updated ban list? Jimmy, I think we're going to start with you on this one. What is your position here? Do you think the Rules Committee, is it needed?
I think one of the biggest parts about Magic and the way that it really truly works is, one, there's a social agreement for Commander. Everyone comes into a game all wanting to have something out of it. They're going to derive some pleasure and entertainment value out of coming to a game. I want to get X out of this. And the reason that they can ask for that reasonably is that they are also going to contribute to the environment that game provides. Now, a lot of times, I know that people play Magic all across the world in different situations. They'll play in their kitchen, in their bedrooms, or at GPs, and with tons of other people. And because these experiences are so varied and so different, and everyone's going to be bringing different decks and playstyles to the table, it's really important to have some sort of area where we can have a unified thought / a coalition of what we think is the right way to play. Now, not necessarily heavily enforced, because as a social contract goes, you can't necessarily say, do this, it's a law. You can only provide suggestions. And I think what the Rules Committee and the ban list does is provide an infrastructure for these players to have an experience that is going to be generally enjoyable for them. I played a lot of games across my entire life, and one of the hardest things to do is entering into a game and not knowing whether or not you're going to be able to walk out of that experience feeling like you had a good time, or that you didn't waste your time being there. Now, I understand that there's obviously there's some derision about the amount of control that the ban list can have, and especially when it comes to affecting stuff like card prices and the things that we've invested in as players. But I would argue that the most valuable thing that we're really putting forth is our time and our effort into building our decks, and our willingness and want to experience this in a multiplayer format with multiple people. As such, I think the fact that a rules committee and a ban list does exist is there to help soft police the format in a way that isn't necessarily extreme utter control, even though it does have a lot of unintended splashes like across the economics of the game as well. I think it's needed for people to enter into an experience and exit out of it with a generally positive experience, and one that's going to want them to keep continuing to play the game, and something that's going to be good for the health of the format as a whole.
All right. Very good points made by Jimmy. Now, Prof, you're on the other side of the fence here. You're not so much in favor of having a rules committee and an updated ban list.
I'm not going to go so far as to say that there should be absolutely no rules committee whatsoever or absolutely no ban list whatsoever, but what I am going to start with is this premise. How can you regulate fun? Commander is a casual format, and so by having this committee whose job it is to look at a format that is, I think it's fair to say, inherently broken, one where it's up to the players in the very social contract you speak of, Jimmy, to make the format work, where if we don't follow a social contract, then the format is not going to work because it's just bonkers playing with cards from throughout Magic's history where it's not just 6 cards that are ruining Commander, as it were. So what you come down to, actually, is a group of individuals, however many are on that rules committee, however many are on that advisory committee, and they are tasked with essentially regulating fun and saying, well, actually, this card is not fun to play, this card is fun to play, when what we need is the loosest, lightest, and most extreme offenses to be said, all right, this card in particular, Shahrazad, we're not going to play in Commander. But to get into things like the recent banning of Iona, a card that has been played since the very inception of the format, and then to say that these handful of individuals found it to be not fun, I trust in their good intent and good faith, but what we are doing is regulating a casual format, and by its very nature, a casual format should not be regulated. Ultimately, the goal of Commander and any rules committee should be to do as little as possible, not to be holding regular meetings, examining and poring over the giant library of cards that is Commander, looking for potential offenders, looking for potential things that, oh, that wouldn't be a fun situation, that wouldn't be a fun situation. That is going to lead to unnecessary bans and a problem in the format. No, we need bans only in the most extreme circumstance, at no other option, and the lightest of rules committees.
All right. Also, some very good points made. Jimmy, you have 1 minute.
All right, Prof, you brought up a really interesting point about trust, about trusting the fact that players are going to do something like... I mean, I think the ultimate thing that boils down to is that this format has grown beyond casual. It's something that now has had official products printed for it every single year. It's arguably the most single popular format of Magic the Gathering. Shows like Game Nights have certainly helped contribute to that in creating what engenders a fun environment for players. But I think what we also have to realize is that while a lot of players watch this content online, a lot of people engage with it, there are still thousands and thousands of people who will never watch a YouTube video, who will never go to mtgcommander.net and not know what the Commander rules group has made into the philosophy of Commander. And as such, I think these are the wayward souls that we actually need to be addressing here. I'm going for the utilitarian approach here. I think the mass amount of good for the most amount of people is going to be having some sort of regulatory thing on top. Now, I don't agree that overreach. I don't think overreach is good. I don't think that they should be doing more than they need to. But I also don't think that we can necessarily assume that that's what they're doing, searching out cards to ban. I think having this provides structure, and that's what the format needs.
Okay, Prof, what do you say to that?
The issue comes down to this. At what point have you fixed the format? At what point have you banned enough where anybody can go out and build any Commander deck with all of the legal cards and not encounter the very situations that their documentation proclaims they are working against? And my answer is that this is impossible. I'm going to state that it is simply not possible to fix the Commander format through bans. Once you have banned Iona, there are other cards that function in the exact same way or spirit of shutting down players, of keeping players from winning. Once you've banned Triumph of the Hordes for the out-of-nowhere infect win, there are literally hundreds more cards that have that same out-of-nowhere win. You cannot ban Commander into a fixed format. The only way to go forward is with the most minimal of bans for the most extreme of circumstances, and then, as you yourself have said, leaning heavily into the social contract of, I'm simply not going to go overkill on this deck. I'm going to ensure that power levels are consistent throughout my play group.
All right. Well, some very good points made by both of you. I want to ask you a question, Prof. Mm-hmm. The logical sort of conclusion to your line of thinking could be seen as there should be no ban list. Is that something that you agree with?
I would rather have no ban list than an expansive ban list if those were my only two choices. I know this is a debate show and we're doing pro and con. Obviously, there's nuance. I do think there needs to be some bans, but if you literally gave me those two choices and you said, we've got this giant 200 card ban list or no ban list and people will have to figure it out, then I would say I'm going to go with people will have to figure it out. And I believe that like a body of water that has been shaken up and disturbed, that eventually the Commander format would settle down, where the cards that are the most degenerate, that literally end or stop games, simply would not be played except in play groups that want them. And think about the potential deck building that might open up for, we've got CEDH players, maybe they'd love to play with some of those cards, and so their play groups would allow them.
Interesting. Now, Jimmy, same question to you. Would you rather a very large ban list? And we were not talking about more than just bans, but I'm just curious to hear your thoughts.
I mean, I'm, of course, in the general camp that more bans are always bad. I think the more that you start restricting the format, the harder you start to enforce something that's unenforceable, which is how should you play? And it's the social contract we talked about. I think the reason that the ban list has caused so much controversy is that a lot of people think that it's a small group of people making a choice for a larger group at whole. And I think it doesn't take into the account the fact that a lot of these cards do work against their general philosophy, which is it stops someone else from having fun, basically, right? Like a card like Iona, I think, says that more than anything else. This is just a single color hoser, and you know what? For the sake of, we do have similar things in the format, but we just don't want to have this one in. I think it's the biggest overreach that the Rules Committee has had in a while for a ban, but I also can completely understand it because as a player that's played a lot and talked to a lot of people, I'm personally fine as long as they are not doing this constantly. If this is something that they just go, you know what? I wish they would just say, this is a card we should have banned from the beginning, instead of now we're going to ban it after discussing it with more people that we've found out that it's not a very fun card to play against. There are plenty of unfun cards to play against, but if you set a precedent that you're just going to start banning them out of nowhere because enough people made enough of a rabble rouse, that's getting into really dangerous territory.
All right, well, really interesting thoughts. All right, don't forget, click the eye icon at the top right corner of your screen so you can vote on who you think won this debate.
Our third and final segment is one that I am so excited to get to bring to you because it's what I've dreamed of since the early days of In Response, which is to have the gentlemen themselves, the knights themselves, Jimmy Wong and Josh Lee Kwai, face off against one another in a pro-con debate. The subject, Magic Arena.
I feel like this happens every time we podcast, but sure, let's rock it.
I think people think we always agree.
Yeah.
Well,
sometimes he mind-slavers me, okay?
It's true.
Well, for the purposes of this next segment, you are contractually obligated to disagree.
All right.
And the subject is the future of Magic Arena. Specifically, should Wizards of the Coast be going all in on digital via Magic Arena, or should it be focusing instead on the paper of its origins? Magic Arena has been a huge, smashing success, more of a success than even Wizards of the Coast projected. It's hard to argue that. But where the argument comes in is what the reaction to that success should be. Is digital and Magic Arena now essentially Magic the Gathering, the face of Magic the Gathering, where all initial effort and emphasis should be placed? Should we continue to develop even further into the digital realm, or must we hang on to our analog and paper roots? Jimmy, you're going to be arguing in favor of going all in on Magic Arena. You also won the coin flip, but Josh is my original co-host from In Response, so I, as moderator, am going to have him go first. Josh, Why should we not go all in on Magic Arena?
Listen, I know earlier I said that the MPL and all of the promotion should be very arena focused because it's the new thing and it's very important, but I think Paper Magic is still really important to the health of this game. It's the foundation that the entire thing was built on. And Paper Magic is also really awesome and really fun. And people that are playing Arena are walking into LGSs. We hear about it all the time and being like, I learned about Magic on Arena. I watched an episode of Game Nights or Commander Versus, and it looks really fun to actually interact with people socially and play this game. And so now I want to, go and dip my toe in the water playing in real life the analog way. And so I think Paper Magic has a really important place still in the ecosystem of what Magic is. I do think Arena is important. I think, it's a balancing act. As with most things, it's not, you can't say it should be all here or it should be all this. They need to make sure that they still pay attention to both sides. And I think that's going to be really important for the health of the game. Arena is awesome. Arena, our world is going more digital all the time. And so it's smart for the company to be playing in that realm and keeping up, because they could easily find themselves in a position down the line where we don't have any digital presence and the world's just not set up in a way where an analog game can work. But we're currently in a big renaissance era for board games and analog games and things like that. Look at Dungeons and Dragons, and all that stuff is in a resurgence. And so it would be crazy at this moment to ignore the paper and the analog half of the game. I just think strike a balance, be smart, sure, lean into Arena, but don't forget about your roots.
That was, you still have some time left on the clock there, Josh.
Sometimes you just make your points and you don't
And they're
need
so
to
concise.
All right. So we're going to throw over to Jimmy now. Jimmy, why should we be pursuing Magic Arena first and foremost as the Magic the Gathering experience? And what does that pursuit look like to you?
Well, to kick things off, I agree with Josh on a lot of points that there needs to be a balance that's struck. I just happen to think that the balance should be heavily focused on the digital side. And that's because, like Josh said, we are 100% moving into a world where digital is the dominant force in all of our lives, on mobile, on handheld, across game, like Nintendo Switch. It's a digital thing now. It's a transportable way for you to enjoy games on the go. And the more that we do this, the more we're finding interconnectivity through each other as well. And Magic Arena has proven by every single metric to be a massive success for Wizards. One that you can undeniably see is by far their strongest selling point moving into the forward future for a company like Hasbro as well. I think from a top-down perspective, Wizards understands that the paper part of Magic is super important. And I agree with them on that. I love paper Magic too. I love the way that it lets me meet people. And I also have my heart out to every single person out there that can't afford to play paper Magic. Now, money is just one of those things that is a highly restricted part of paper Magic. There's an entire economy built into it, websites, retailers, and all that stuff. And yes, we are a part of that economy as well, but it's also an extremely restrictive one, and I think it would be a miss to not recognize that. We've seen players come up with so many amazing ideas on their own. Commander was a fan-invented format. So was Oathbreaker. I would love to be able to see these platforms be pushed into the digital online sphere to continue their growth and for a lot of people to experience it, because just in general right now, a Commander deck can be really restrictive. I love talking about, with my friends that, hey, you can make a budget deck. You can definitely do it. But then sometimes people don't live by an LGS. They don't live by a play group. They don't have this amazing group of people around them. We play game nights together and we get to see an awesome group of people come together and have a blast, but that's just simply an experience that's not afforded to everyone. And I think something that Magic really needs to do to capture a growing audience, especially one that might just skip out on this game for the next hot thing if they're not careful, is to really push into that multiplayer format area, see what they can do to make Magic work on mobile, and see what they can do to really expand the player base and focus on digital first.
2 minutes exact. Thank you very much, Jimmy. Josh, since you had some time remaining, if you wish to go 20 seconds over in your rebuttal, I will allow it.
I like how formal this is.
Of course, not necessary.
Sure.
You've heard Jimmy's points on this. I'd like to hear your response to them.
Well, see, some of what Jimmy has said worries me a little bit, because specifically the fact of trying to get multiplayer onto Arena, I think is a kind of a big red flag. Let's perfect what Arena is. Let's get that down really well first, because multiplayer in Arena requires a lot of resources to pull off. They have to redesign a lot of what they've already done. Right now, there's not really a way within that client to look at multiple board states. There's not really a good way to interact with other players. We've also seen that multiplayer doesn't really work well digitally. It was available on Magic Online for years and years and years, and yet the percentage of people that played multiplayer Magic on Magic Online was infinitesimal compared to those playing Limited and Standard and Modern. It just doesn't have the same draw as in person, and I think that's one of the big advantages that paper Magic has over digital Magic, is that social interaction that works in multiplayer settings. So that scares me. I don't want them to waste their resources. It'd be really easy for them to just throw money into digital incorrectly, and then they leave themselves in a position that's worse than they are now. Let's just do Arena correctly, let paper Magic do what it does well, and not try and cross the two with on everything.
I'm afraid that you have expended your time. It sounds like you were just wrapping up just then. So that was a perfect use of the excess. Thank you very much for that rebuttal.
Thank you, Josh,
LeBlanc.
for using your time
Can
so
we moderate
graciously.
Can I moderate another debate after this one so that I can?
Yeah,
so I
we'll
can
be
a
time police.
Yeah, exactly.
Time police. I'm moderating. I'm offering my skills. I'm offering my skills in moderation.
I'm glad your
I
math
feel.
is good, Prof,
Yes,
to make
yes,
sure
yes.
we're not breaking any rules here.
Jimmy, your rebuttal.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I get it. Playing multiplayer online, you're not sitting across from someone, you're not talking to them, but it is still something that people love to do. League of Legends, a classic example of a game that has never had voice support until very recently, and you can't even talk to the other players on your teammate. Now, yes, there's plenty of toxicity in that game, as well as other games like Heroes of the Storm and Dota and all of those. But it's still something that people crave to do. People still look for the opportunity to play with other people, to synergize with things, to go one-on-one with someone else in a group setting. And I think that's something that's just inherent to human nature. And I think technology has also afforded us the ability to be able to do something like that with voice chat, with the ability to communicate with people over things like Skype, Discord, all of that. Gives us an opportunity to potentially explore into this space. Magic is right now trying to reach across so many different boundaries. They're doing an animated show. They're keeping paper up. They're doing digital. They're doing X, Y, and Z. There's maybe a movie in the works. I think they really need to coalesce those efforts into something that every single person is going to have access to, and that's computer.
All right. Thank you very much. Now, for this final, I have a question as well, but for this final one, I'm actually going to not
We're putting away the
offer any.
timer?
We're putting away the timer since
Sweet.
you, because of your
2
because
hours
of your-
later.
because of your mockery of my moderation.
No,
I feel we can
it was
move
a compliment.
Forward. I feel we can move forward
I was
with no
mocking.
time restriction because here's my final question. and I
Okay.
think it's an important one because you both brought up multiplayer. Now, you are the command zone. You are game nights. You are a multiplayer. Like, I mean, if my question to you is, am I ever going to get to see a game of Modern on game nights? Answer is very slim. Your
Right.
guys are about
Right.
multiplayer. So my final question on this is about multiplayer, and it is this. Is it worth it? And those are the questions I ask on my channel. But Josh Lee Kwai, Jimmy Wong, is it worth it to spend the resources to add multiplayer to Magic Arena? Josh, we'll start with you.
Short answer, I don't believe so. I don't believe that first of all, the amount of resources it would take, whatever it would be, is probably somewhere in the millions of dollars range to update the client to be able to play multiplayer. There's not any guarantee that that pays off with people even playing that at the end of it. Like I said, the evidence we have, which is small, but it's Magic Online. If Magic Online in its heyday was seeing roughly equivalent amounts of people play multiplayer Magic that were playing the other formats, then maybe I would say so. But it was very, very small, hundreds of people versus tens of thousands. So that tells me that digital multiplayer Magic is missing something. Could we be in an age someday with VR or holo deck technology where we're virtually in a real space? Sure. But right now, I think over a screen, dealing with multiplayer, figuring out how to see everybody's boards, make sense of it, and communicate with all the players at once, it's a very big ask. It's not that it couldn't work. I'm just saying the percentage chance that it could is small enough that I don't think it's worth risking the resources.
Jimmy, what do you think? Is it worth it to spend the resources to get multiplayer on Magic Arena? Since you're arguing it should be invested in, what about that investment?
I think the way you develop something like this takes time, and it takes a lot of effort and care. And Josh is right. It would be an extreme expenditure for a company to say, like, you know what? We need to rebuild this client essentially to be able to work with 4 people, 5 people instead of 2. And I don't know anything about programming, but I know for a fact that that is not an easy thing to do. People would talk about bugs all the time on Modo. You'd have to sit there and pass priority after every single action. It became a dredge to really play through. So I think what we have is an unrefined system for a very refined kind of game. Now, if I was in charge of it, I think what I would want to do is not necessarily try and gut Magic Arena, but find a way to start slowly implementing the idea and seeing the reaction and following where our sort of our descent leads us. Right? Let's say you were to include something like Brawl or Oathbreaker into Magic Arena. First, it starts off as one-on-one. If you see a huge influx of players, and then you would start polling people, you'd get people's pulses. And if you saw that there was a definite trend of people wanting to go that direction, and I personally think that there would be, then I think that's at that point you trying to figure out, what do we do to make this work? Because as it stands right now, I don't think it's actually possible, but I would like to see it happen. Even though I know in my heart that it is extremely impossible to make this really work in a fluid way, just because you're sitting there passing priority 1,000 times for every single turn. And honestly, no one wants to do that. Paper Magic does let you shortcut those things, but I think we can find something that you can do that as well in online Magic.
Fantastic. Well, I invite everybody listening at home and watching at home to put your votes in for who you think won each debate. Remember that the question is not whether or not you agree with the side of the issue, but which rhetor presented the best argument and won that debate. If you would like to see more from Jimmy and Josh, where can we find you? What do you do? Where can they consume?
What do
your,
we do?
Where can people find your number one content?
Well, you can go ahead and go to youtube.com/The Command Zone Podcast, where you can find people like Professor guesting on our episodes of Game Nights, which is a multiplayer Magic the Gathering show where we play paper Magic with each other.
You probably don't want to spoil that I'm on an upcoming Game Nights.
Oh, well, you've been on previous Game Nights.
Oh,
which
yes.
To.
Oh, right. Which, of course,
So we
is
definitely
what that
wouldn't want to
is.
spoil that.
Yeah, there's no other reason you would be
have,
in
like,
our
you-
studio here in sunny Los Angeles. Yeah,
Right.
why
I
are
was
you
just
here?
passing through.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, on your
Portland's
You're
right
from
next to
here?
LA. I'm from LA.
Yeah. You're visiting the fam. You can find us online at youtube.com/The Command Zone Podcast. We're at CommandCast on Twitter, Josh Lee Kwai, and JF Wong, where we spend our time also, turns out, debating people online. Who would have thought?
Who'd have thought?
And until next time, we will see you in response. And this program was made possible thanks to a sponsorship from Card Kingdom, as well as the Patreon support of viewers such as you. So thank you.